history with power generation and a complex set of policies and strategies set up to maximize efficiency and attempt to reduce environmental harm related to the infrastructure development for that electricity generation. Let's focus on the policies and strategies that surround this infrastructure, as well as take a look into the future related to renewable energy sources. There are a number of important strategies and policies related to energy in New Zealand. I'll summarize a few of those and we'll talk in more depth later on. First, the National Policy Statement for Renewable Energy Generation in 2011, the NPS-REG, sets out the objective and policies for renewable energy generation under the Resource Management Act of 1991. The NPS-REG came into effect on the 13th of May, 2011. The National Policy Statement on Electricity Transmission of 2008, NPS, is guidance for local authorities on how to recognize the national significance of our national grid in the Resource Management Act of 1991, planning documents, and local decision making. These documents include regional policy statements, regional plans, and district plans. The NPS took effect on the 10th of April, 2008. The New Zealand Energy Strategy 2050 plan was released in October of 2007. The strategy provides long-term direction for energy policy and promotes the development of an energy system that supports economic growth in an environmentally responsible way. This was developed by the Ministry of Economic Development, again in 2007. Next is the New Zealand Energy Efficiency and Conservation Strategy. The Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority was established as a Crown entity in 2000, and with the Ministry for the Environment developed the National Energy Efficiency and Conservation Strategy, NEECS. The strategy set out the government's policies on energy efficiency, energy conservation, and the use of renewable energy. It also set national targets relating to both energy efficiency and the level of energy supply for renewable energy sources. The policy is also intended to help achieve the objectives of the New Zealand Energy Strategy to 2050. It includes measures to reduce electricity demand, address energy use in transport, buildings, and industry, and promote greater consideration of sustainable energy in the development of land, settlements, and energy production. This is from the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority of 2007. The National Policy Statement for Renewable Energy Generation was passed in 2011 with the objective to recognize the national significance of renewable electricity generation activities by providing for the development, operation, maintenance, and upgrading of new and existing renewable electricity generation activities, such that the proportion of New Zealand's energy generation from renewable energy sources increases to a level that meets or exceeds the New Zealand government's national target for renewable electricity generation. Additional objectives relate the idea that the NPS-REG will drive a consistent approach to planning for renewable energy generation in New Zealand. It gives clear government direction on the benefits of renewable electricity generation and requires all councils to make provision for it in their plans. The NPS-REG works alongside other government initiatives as part of New Zealand's wider response to tackling climate change. The National Policy Statement on Electricity Transmission of 2008 sets out the objective and policies to enable the management of the effects of electricity transmission network under the Resource Management Act of 1991. There are 5 main focuses for the strategy. First, it acknowledges the national significance of the national grid, which now has to be considered in local decision-making on resource management. Second, it recognizes the national benefits we all get from electricity transmissions, such as better security of supply of electricity. Third, it gives guidance to local decision makers in the management of the impacts of the transmission network on its environment. And fourth, it also guides the management of the adverse effects of activities from third parties on the grid. This will help reduce constraints on the operation, maintenance, upgrading, and development of the grid. And finally, the fifth objective, it ensures long-term strategic planning for elements of the national grid. The New Zealand Energy Strategy, NZES, sets out the government's vision of a sustainable, low-emission energy system and describes the actions that will be taken to make this a reality. The draft version of the document was released for public consultation in December of 2006. Over 330 organizations and individuals made submissions, which reflects the high level of public interest in the importance of choices we make about our future energy path. The NZES is in two parts. Part 1 sets out the government's vision for a sustainable energy system and the key actions we can take now to move us towards making New Zealand the world's first truly sustainable nation. Part 2 gives details of the initiatives the government will take, both now and in the future. Next, we'll take a closer look at energy systems that are in New Zealand, and we'll investigate the challenges discussed in the strategies, and we'll also see how the strategy is linked with other strategies. This pie chart shows the type of energy that's consumed in New Zealand. We primarily rely on energy from oil, water, natural gas, coal, and geothermal energy. New Zealand's energy prices have historically been low by international standards, and there has been relatively little investment in energy efficiency for homes, shops, light industry, and transport. The inefficiency of the residential sector is commonly felt every time winter rolls around. It's fodder for media discussion and for people huddled at home feeling a little cold during those winter months. New Zealand's total greenhouse gas emissions are only about 0.3% of global emissions, but we have the 12th highest per capita emissions in the world. At the same time, greenhouse gas emissions are projected to rise 39% by 2030, including a 40% increase in emissions from the transport sector. The government believes this would not only be environmentally irresponsible, but would put New Zealand exports at a disadvantage. It would increase our exposure to the cost of imported fossil fuels and threaten our reputation as a clean, green tourist destination. Two important challenges are discussed in the New Zealand Energy Strategy. First, we rely on imported oil for around half of our energy needs, and we must be prepared to respond to supply disruptions caused by international events beyond our control. The government has increased our oil reserves to act as a buffer and to meet our treaty obligations as a member of the International Energy Agency, the IEA, as well as updating emergency response planning. New Zealand's geological basins are underexplored, and there is a significant chance of more oil being discovered in the future. In the meantime, using more gas would use up our reserves more quickly, which could cause gas and electricity prices to increase closer to the cost of imported liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The government believes that the current regime and the incentives for gas exploration are generally appropriate and do not need to be enhanced further. It is essential for New Zealand to maintain a secure electricity supply. The dominance of hydroelectricity in our energy system has given New Zealand relatively cheap electricity, but our limited ability to store water puts us at risk of shortages in dry years. Historically, we've relied on fossil fuel-based generation to back up hydro when water is short. For the foreseeable future, we'll maintain a secure electricity supply through an increased use of new renewable sources of electricity generation with existing renewable and fossil fuel generation.